Under keys, I listed front door 3 copies. One missing. Garage keypad 1969. Fireproof box key gone. Safe combo. Yellow card missing from phone book. Under money, I wrote savings 108.9Ks, octi balance. Checking 11Ks, hospice bill 2,800, unpaid. Funeral deposit? Unknown. Under devices, my flip phone. Linda's iPad gone. Ring doorbell, login changed. I paused. For the first time since Linda's passing, I didn't feel broken. I felt like a custodian. The next morning, November 26th, I went to Westview Memorial. Dennis, the funeral director, adjusted his glasses and pulled up his records. Your daughter-in-law paid the deposit, he said. 2,500 November 18th at 4:26 p.m. He showed me the visa slip. The last 4 digits matched the card Kayla used at Macy's. Later that day, Mr. Kwan from our bank called. Ms. Delgado's letter had reached him. Mr. Whitman, there was an $1,800 transfer out of your joint savings on November 18th at 2:12 p.m. ACH to an external account. My throat went dry. Whose? I asked. He hesitated. We can't disclose until the subpoena, but I'll freeze suspicious disbursements pending probate. I wrote it all down in the ledger. $18,500 ACH, Nov 18, 2:12 p.m. Funeral deposit $2,500. Nov 18, 4:26 p.m. Both within 2 hours of each other. Linda had been in her hospice bed that day, barely able to speak. On November 27th, Thanksgiving, I ate toast at the counter. The house smelled of dust, not turkey. I opened the recipe box to look at her handwriting and found a card that said, iPad, pass 0723. My hands trembled as I powered on the tablet. Instead of Linda's home screen, a new Apple ID greeted me, Kayla Whitman. My blood ran cold. By the 28th, I had a plan. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was building a case, one scrap at a time. The binder sleeve might be empty, but my ledger was filling fast. And if Kayla thought she could rewrite Linda's last wishes, she hadn't reckoned with the man Linda married, a man who saved every receipt and never forgot a number. I didn't hack. I highlighted. That's what I told myself as I sat at the kitchen table on November 28th, flipping through the ledger I'd started. It wasn't about breaking in. It was about circling what was already there, showing it in the right light. Miss Delgado called that morning. Mr. Whitman, the bank has agreed to a temporary hold on large transfers. We'll need to move fast, though. People like Kayla count on you being too tired to fight. She wasn't wrong. I was tired. But grief had curdled into something sharper. I wanted the truth on paper. On December 1st, Mr. Kwan from the bank phoned. His voice was clipped professional. Mr. Whitman, a cashier's check for $12,000 was purchased on December 5th, payable to Kayla's Boutique LLC. We'll flag it pending counsel. Her boutique? I repeated, though I already knew. Kayla had opened that clothing shop 2 years ago, a vanity project Mark had sunk money into. Linda once whispered to me, that store bleeds more than it sells. Now I had proof it was being fed with my wife's savings. That night, I pulled out the Ringbase unit. Even though the login was changed, the device itself still stored local logs, timestamps without video. I scrolled to November 19th. At 11:42 p.m., the log blinked, motion event. I remembered Ruth swearing she'd seen Kayla's car around that time. No picture, but the timeline was enough. I logged it in the ledger. Ring event, Nov 19, 11:42 p.m. Matches Ruth's sighting. December 2nd. Pastor Joel sent me a screenshot of his text thread with Linda. She asked me on November 5th about paperwork, he explained, and wanted to know if I'd be willing to witness. I stared at the message. Linda had been planning to update her will, with me sitting across the table. Not Kayla, not Mark, me. That evening, my phone lit up with Mark's name. My thumb hovered before I answered. Dad, he said, his voice tight. Kayla and I have been working on Mom's wishes. She didn't want to complicate things. We'll bring you something to sign. What is it? I asked. A new will, he said flatly. Simple, you get the house to live in. I handle the accounts. I looked at the empty space where Linda's binder sleeve had once held her true will. My stomach tightened. "Bring it," I said, though my voice was cold. After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room, listening to the tick of the wall clock. I could almost hear Linda's voice. "Don't fight angry, Hal. Fight prepared." So I prepared. I took photographs of the empty binder sleeve, the safe in the closet, the key hooks with one missing. I even photographed the hospice bill with its penciled "paid," and the pharmacy receipt with Linda's initials. Evidence doesn't care if you're grieving. It just waits to be noticed. On December 3rd, I met Dennis, the funeral director, again. He showed me his call log. November 18th, 4:02 p.m. Kayla confirming flowers and asking about expedited certificates. He added, "Your wife asked me back on October 29th about a simple update. She said you'd sign together once her antibiotics were done." That small note gutted me. Linda had wanted our decisions shared. Instead, Kayla had carved me out before the dirt on the grave was even cold. I brought all of it back to Ms. Delgado. She spread the receipts, logs, and screenshots across her desk like cards in a game. "They're going to hand you a document, Mr. Whitman," she said, "dated the night before Linda died. That's how these things go. But we'll be ready. Witnesses, notary, timeline, all of it can be challenged. You keep collecting. Every detail matters." I left her office steadier than I'd felt in weeks. The grief hadn't gone. It never would. But in its place I had a ledger. And in that ledger, Kayla's smirk at the funeral was starting to look less like victory and more like evidence. By the time I drove home, the winter sky had gone dark before 5. The garage keypad still worked with the old 1969 code. I punched it in and thought, they changed passwords, maybe even wills, but they forgot who kept the codes. They slid the will across my kitchen table like a menu. December 4th, 6:15 p.m. Mark and Kayla walked in without knocking, as if the house already belonged to them. The draft carried the title, "Last Will and Testament of Linda Whitman," stapled in the corner, smelling faintly of toner. "Mom wanted things simple," Kayla said, her voice syrup over steel. She tapped the date line, November 19th, 9:30 p.m., the night before Linda died. I studied the first page. It granted me a life estate in the house, permission to live here until my death. Everything else, including our savings, checking, and personal property, passed to Mark for the benefit of his family. My throat dried. A life estate. They dressed eviction in legal lace. Where was this signed? I asked. "At home," Kayla answered smoothly. "After you fell asleep." She was very clear. Clear? That night I'd sat awake, watching the hospice nurse adjust Linda's oxygen at 9:45 p.m. I remembered the sound of the machine humming, the way Linda whispered my name through the mask. She hadn't left her bed. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper, noticing what wasn't there. Linda's hands always left smudges of lotion or flour on documents she touched. This will was crisp, untouched by life. The witnesses were listed as T. Harris and B. Cole, names I didn't know. The notary stamp read, "City Notary Services." My pen tapped against the date. "Dad," Mark said, almost pleading, "this is what she wanted." "Let's not drag it out," Kayla leaned forward, voice dropping. "All you have to do is accept it. We'll handle everything." I folded the pages back together without a word. My tea sat untouched, steam curling upward like smoke from a fire about to spread. "Thank you for bringing this," I said evenly. "I'll look it over." They left with forced smiles, as if the sale had been made. The moment the door shut, I slid the will into a plastic sleeve and placed it in the ledger binder under a new tab. Contested. That night I emailed scans of every page to Ms. Delgado. Her reply came at 11:07 p.m., exactly as expected. "We subpoena the notary's journal first thing tomorrow. Witnesses can be tested. Don't confront them again until court. Keep collecting." December 5th, the very next morning, Mr. Kwan emailed Ms. Delgado a copy of the $12,000 cashier's check issued to Kayla's boutique. Same date, same handwriting on the bank slip. Delgado filed a lis pendens against the house by noon. Legal notice to block any transfer of title. Kayla might have thought the ink on her will was permanent, but Delgado's filing was stronger than paper. That evening, I went to the closet where Mark used to keep his baseball gear. In the glove sat a ring of old spare keys. 3 keys jingled when I picked it up. One was missing, the front door duplicate. I wrote it in the ledger. Spare set, short 1 key, deck 5. The air in the house tasted metallic, like pennies on the tongue. Tension has a flavor, and mine was blood iron. December 6th, Ruth knocked again. "Hal," she whispered. "Kayla's car was in your driveway late last night. Lights off. She stayed 20 minutes, I nodded, tired of pretending surprise. Ruth glanced toward the kitchen table. "They're circling you, aren't they?" "Not circling," I said. "They think they've already landed. On December 7th, I called Ms. Delgado from the porch." My voice was steady. "They've shown me the will." "Good," she replied. "Now we show them the truth. I'll pull city notary's records. If Linda signed on the 19th, there should be an entry with her ID, her signature, and the witnesses. If not, they've boxed themselves in." She paused. "And Mr. Whitman? Keep the ledger current. The little things will undo them." That night, I sat with the will open again under the brass lamp. I traced Linda's name on the signature line. It was her handwriting, shaky but familiar. But something in my gut screamed it wasn't placed there the way she lived. The ink looked rushed, like someone copying under pressure. They lowered my wife into the ground at 10:17 a.m., and by noon, my daughter-in-law leaned in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "No need to come tomorrow. We already buried what mattered." The wind cut across Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis, a late November cold that bites through black coats and polite phrases. I stared at the photo on the program. Linda at 32, hair like spilled honey, holding a pie on our first Thanksgiving. And I understood the line wasn't about grief. It was about the house. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The pastor's amen was still hanging when Kayla pulled Mark away toward the parking lot, her heels clicking on wet stone as if she were late to a sale. I folded the program into my coat pocket and felt something else crumpled there. The hospice bill I'd stuffed away that morning, $2,800, penciled with Linda's question from a week earlier, paid. We were the kind of couple who wrote answers in the margins, not under the table. At home, the house breathed that quiet a place takes on when the one who made it home is gone. The oven timer dinged because I'd brushed against the knob. I shut it off and set the bill on the counter beside Linda's pharmacy receipt from November 3rd. $428 for heart meds, her neat initials in the corner, LW, like she was still co-signing my days. A faint trace of her lavender lotion still lingered on the armchair fabric where her crochet bag used to rest. I touched it, hoping it would last. The key hook by the door had a gap where Mark's duplicate should have been. I counted. My brass house key, the shed key, the mailbox key, and an empty hook, accusing and plain. Ruth from next door tapped on the glass with 2 knuckles. "You decent, Hal?" she asked, then stepped in without waiting. She set down a casserole wrapped in a towel and whispered, "I don't like that one," meaning Kayla. "Last night, late, she and a man hauled out a shoebox and an envelope. Her door shut at 11:45, I heard it. Ruth hears everything. She pretends not to as a kindness. I checked the Ring app on my phone. The login flashed for a code I didn't recognize. Password changed at 11:53 p.m. The exact minute Ruth swore she heard that car door slam. I tried again, hands shaking. Same message. I wrote the time on a yellow legal pad and titled the top line, "Linda to keep." Under it I listed hospice bill 2,800, pharmacy 428, pastor's number, and a note called Delgado probate. Linda had scribbled that name on a post-it and tucked it in my jacket 2 weeks earlier. The last time she sent me to pick up soup. By 5, the sun slid behind the maples we planted in 1996, when the mortgage still felt like a cliff. Mark didn't answer his phone. Kayla texted, "Please rest. We'll handle everything." I could hear the "we" in that message like a door closing. That night, sitting in our bedroom doorway, I realized something. I had buried my wife, but I hadn't buried my instincts. And my instincts told me Kayla wasn't mourning. She was moving. Somewhere outside, a car door shut. Somewhere inside, a plan started I didn't yet know I was making. Grief steals your hours. Thieves steal what's left. The day after the funeral, November 21st, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the hospice bill pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a cardinal. The number 2800 blurred in my eyes. I rubbed the paper with my thumb, as if I could erase the debt. The house was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, every creak in the floorboards Linda used to cover with laughter. I heated soup in the microwave and let it sit until it went cold. The oven timer dinged again, not because I'd set it, but because I leaned on the knob reaching for a spoon. It felt like the house was mocking me with phantom sounds. I walked room to room, her perfume bottle on the dresser still 3/4 full, her glasses folded on the nightstand, the indentation of her pillow still waiting for her head. I couldn't decide whether to cry or to scream. So I did neither. I just sat. By November 22nd, the Sunday after the funeral, I tried to gather myself. I pulled out Linda's binder, the one with the plastic sleeves, sorted by tabs, utilities, mortgage, insurance, and one labeled in red marker, will. My fingers shook opening to it. The sleeve was empty, just an outline of dust where the document had been. My throat closed. That binder was our life's map. If the will was gone, it meant someone had already started redrawing the map in their favor. At 9:11 that morning, my phone lit up with Pastor Joel's name. "Hal, I wanted to check on you," he said. His voice had that gentle weight, the kind that steadies you even when you want to collapse. I told him about the empty sleeve. He grew quiet, then said, "Linda called me November 5th. She asked about updating the will. She said she wanted to be sure you'd be secure." He paused, then texted me a screenshot of his calendar note. "Enduve 5/2/14 p.m. Linda W. asked about joint probate attorney before Thanksgiving." I put the phone down and wept for the first time since the graveside. Not because of what was gone, but because even in her last weeks, Linda had been protecting me, leaving breadcrumbs I hadn't seen. The next day, November 23rd, I found one of those breadcrumbs. In the pocket of my grey funeral jacket, a post-it note in Linda's handwriting, "Call Delgado probate." The ink trailed off at the end of the O, like her strength had run out mid-stroke. I pressed the note to my chest and whispered, "I'll call." That night I tried the Ring doorbell app again. Same locked-out message, same two-factor code request to a number that wasn't mine. Whoever had changed the login had done it with purpose. I scribbled it in my yellow pad. Ring, 11:53 p.m., Nov 19. Changed. I circled it 3 times. By the evening of the 23rd, I'd stopped eating properly. Ruth knocked again, bringing me leftover turkey from her sister's early Thanksgiving. She lowered her voice. "Hal, I saw Kayla again. Midnight 2 nights ago. Car idling, headlights off. She carried something heavy, envelope-shaped, into the trunk. Then she drove off. I thanked her, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. After she left, I collapsed on the bed with Linda's Afghan draped across me, the hospice bill tucked under my pillow like a child clutching a toy for comfort. Sleep came in fragments, 20 minutes here, a jolt awake there. By November 24th, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I finally hit bottom. I tried making coffee, but left the pot empty on the burner until the smell of scorched glass filled the kitchen. I sat in the garage, where Linda used to pot her plants in spring. I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to the voicemail Pastor Joel had left. His words, "She told me she wanted you secure." The message broke me. I stumbled back inside, gripped the post-it note like it was scripture, and dialed the number written on it. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. The line clicked, and a calm voice answered, "This is Elena Delgado's office." I cleared my throat. "My name is Harold Whitman. My wife Linda passed last week. She told me to call you." There was a pause, then the voice replied, "Mr. Whitman, before you throw anything away, bring every scrap you've got. We start with what you can prove." That sentence hit me harder than Kayla's smirk at the graveside. Bring every scrap. My grief wasn't going to save me, but maybe my habits could. Linda always said I was meticulous to a fault. Now for the first time, I saw it as my lifeline. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. The bills on the counter, the receipts tucked in drawers, the empty sleeve in the binder. Evidence wasn't just papers, it was memory, time, proof. And if I couldn't keep Linda, I would at least keep the truth she left behind. I walked into the law office on November 25th, carrying a grocery bag filled with grief and receipts. The elevator smelled like stale coffee, and when the doors opened on the 8th floor, I nearly turned around. But Linda's post-it note burned in my pocket. Call Delgado. Elena Delgado didn't look like the bulldog lawyer I'd pictured. She had kind eyes but a sharp suit, and she cleared the papers from her desk with one motion, as if making room for a life in pieces. "Let's see what you brought," she said. I emptied the bag like a man shaking out pockets before laundry. The crumpled $2,800 hospice bill, the $428 pharmacy receipt, 3 utility statements, and a printout of our October bank balance, $189,214 in savings, $11,132 in checking. I placed the yellow legal pad on top with my scribbles. Ring, 11:53 p.m. Number 19, changed. She scanned each item the way a carpenter measures twice before cutting once. "Do you know of any recent transfers?" she asked. "Not yet," I admitted. "But something's missing." "Linda's will." "Gone from the binder," Miss Delgado leaned back. "That's the heart of it, Mr. Whitman. Probate law starts with the most recent valid will. If they produce one, we test it. Witnesses, notary capacity. Until then, we gather. Paper is memory." She drafted a stack of letters, requests to the bank for transaction logs, to the funeral home for invoices, to the notary office for journals. "We'll also file a notice of intent to probate," she explained. "That puts the court on alert. It's like hanging a lock on the door before the burglars come back." I nodded, though my hands still shook. She slid me a clean notebook. "Start a ledger. Track everything, keys, locks, dates, devices. Who has what? You'll need continuity, not just suspicion." That night, I sat at the kitchen table under the glow of the brass lamp Linda had picked out 30 years ago. On the first page of the notebook, I wrote in block letters, "Continuity Ledger." I closed the binder and whispered into the silence, "Linda, if this is the fight you left me, I'll finish it." The notary remembered the perfume, not the patient. That's how I knew we had them. December 8th, Ms. Delgado and I walked into City Notary Services on Olive Street. The place smelled like toner and lemon cleaner, with a fake plant drooping in the corner. A woman named Ms. Briggs pulled a leather-bound journal from a drawer. "You're here about the Whitman file?" she asked, already nervous. She flipped to November 19th, 9:27 p.m. There it was, Linda Whitman, listed as signer. ID type, Missouri driver's license. Witnesses, T. Harris and B. Cole. Fee paid $15. I leaned closer. Linda hadn't left her bed that night. She hadn't been strong enough to sit in a chair, let alone drive across town to sign papers. Ms. Delgado asked, "Do you remember meeting Mrs. Whitman?" Ms. Briggs hesitated. It was quick. Pretty Woman led the group. Husband was quiet. Pretty Woman, husband. She wasn't describing Linda and me. She was describing Kayla and Mark. "Did you actually speak to Mrs. Whitman?" Delgado pressed. "Well, not directly. They said she was recovering in the car." I didn't want to intrude. My hands curled into fists. Linda was never in that car. She was in our bedroom, gasping for air, with me counting each breath. "Do you remember anything else?" Delgado asked. Miss Briggs brightened, as if trying to recall a detail to prove she wasn't careless. She smelled floral. Strong perfume. I noticed it. Floral perfume. Linda hadn't worn perfume in months. Chemo had made her skin raw. She used unscented lotion only. We requested the office's security camera stills, but the system auto-overwrote every 14 days. Gone. What we did get was the payment slip, Visa ending in 7712. Delgado circled it with her pen. "That card matches Kayla's funeral deposit," she said quietly. The dominoes started to tip. That afternoon, I stopped by Westview Memorial again. Dennis, the funeral director, pulled up his call log. November 18th, 4:02 p.m. Kayla confirming flowers, asking about expedited certificates. He shook his head. Your wife spoke to me on October 29th about updating her will. She said she wanted both of you to sign after her antibiotics. She was so clear. His record was dated, signed, and stamped with the funeral home letterhead. I tucked it into the ledger under witness statements. On December 10th, Delgado called a private investigator she trusted. By the 12th, he had filed an affidavit with photos. Kayla entering our house November 19th, 11:42 p.m., carrying a shoebox. At 12:06 a.m., she left with a lanyard dangling from her hand, the fireproof box key I'd been searching for. The timestamps were burned into the corner of each photo like truth, branded in light. When Delgado slid the affidavit across her desk, I felt my throat tighten. They didn't just forge her will, I said. They stole the key to the very box where the real one should have been, she nodded. Which means they had opportunity, motive, and cover-up. This isn't probate anymore. This is fraud. I walked out of her office with the PI affidavit tucked in my coat. The city air was sharp, full of exhaust and cold. My hands shook, not from grief this time, but from fury finding direction. That night, Ruth came over with 2 mugs of tea. She sat at the table and said, "Hal, you're looking different, stronger." I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. Because now it's not just suspicion. It's proof. On December 13th, Delgado filed the petition to contest the November 19th will. The court set a hearing for January 14th, 32 days away. Long enough for Kayla to think she'd won. Short enough for me to keep the fire burning. I updated the ledger that night. November 19, 9:27 p.m. Notary journal entry. No Linda present. Perfume detail wrong. Good Kayla's Denov 19, 11:42 p.m. PI affidavit. Kayla enters house, leaves with fireproof box key. Oct 29. Dennis confirms Linda wanted joint signature. I closed the book, and for the first time since the funeral, I felt like Linda was sitting beside me. I could almost hear her whisper, "You're not crazy, Hal. You're careful. Keep going." The forgery wasn't just shaky, it was collapsing. And by the time the judge heard it, the weight of every receipt, every log, every affidavit would crush Kayla's pretty story flat. Under oath lies way more. That's what I told myself as I sat in the oak-paneled probate courtroom on January 14th, St. Louis, Division 3. The air smelled of dust and disinfectant, with the faint echo of heels on tile. My wife's photo was folded in my jacket pocket, a silent witness no one could cross-examine. Kayla walked in wearing a cream suit, chin high, the way someone enters a boutique opening. Mark followed behind, looking more like a boy dragged to the principal's office than a man facing probate. Ms. Delgado adjusted her glasses and whispered to me, "Breathe steady. Truth does the heavy lifting today." The judge, a tall man with silver hair, called the case. Matter of the estate of Linda Whitman. Contest to the November 19th will. His voice was even, but my pulse thundered. Kayla's lawyer went first. He held up the stapled pages and declared, "This is the decedent's final will and testament, signed November 19th, properly notarized, witnessed, and executed. It grants Mr. Whitman a life estate as she intended and leaves assets to her son's family. We ask the court to honor her wishes." I clenched my fists under the table. Wishes? Linda had whispered her real wish on November 5th when she called Pastor Joel, "Make sure Hal is secure." When it was our turn, Ms. Delgado rose with calm precision. She didn't thunder. She placed paper after paper on the evidence table, letting the weight of proof build. "Your Honor," she began, "we contend the November 19th document is invalid. It was not executed by Linda Whitman in person, nor was she capable that evening. What we will show is a forgery built on fraud." The judge nodded. "Proceed." First came Dennis, the funeral director. He adjusted his tie nervously. "Mrs. Whitman asked me on October 29th about updating her will. She said she wanted to sign together with her husband after finishing antibiotics." He held up his call log, neat and dated. "On November 18th, I spoke with Kayla, not Linda, about expedited certificates. Next was Pastor Joel. He read aloud the November 5th text Linda had sent him. Before Thanksgiving, we'll update paperwork. Make sure Hal is secure." His voice caught on her words. For a moment, even the judge's pen stopped moving. Then Miss Delgado called Mr. Kwan from the bank. He produced the ledger of transactions, an $18,500 ACH transfer on November 18th, a $2,500 funeral deposit hours later, and a $12,000 cashier's check to Kayla's boutique on December 5th. He confirmed the account had been frozen pending this hearing. Funds were withdrawn without Mr. Whitman's knowledge, he said. The timing correlates directly with these contested events. Kayla shifted in her seat, whispering furiously to her lawyer. Mark's shoulders slumped. Then came the notary, Ms. Briggs. She clutched her journal like a shield. Under Delgado's questioning, she admitted, "The woman told me Linda was in the car recovering. I didn't want to disturb her. Did you see Linda sign?" Delgado asked. "No," Briggs admitted softly. "Did you smell perfume?" "Yes, floral, strong." Was Mrs. Whitman undergoing chemotherapy? I don't know." I rose slightly, voice steady. "She couldn't tolerate scents. She used unscented lotion." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Briggs, do you understand the seriousness of notarizing a document without verifying the signer?" Her face went pale. I do now." Delgado then introduced the private investigator's affidavit. Enlarged photos were projected on the courtroom screen. Kayla entering my house, November 19th, 11:42 p.m., shoebox under her arm. Kayla leaving at 12:06 a.m., lanyard in hand, the fireproof box key. The timestamps glowed like neon. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the bailiff leaned forward. Kayla's lawyer objected, calling it circumstantial. The judge overruled. The affidavit and photos are admitted. Finally, Delgado turned to me. "Mr. Whitman, what do you recall on the evening of November 19th?" I swallowed hard. My wife was in her hospice bed. At 9:45 p.m., the nurse adjusted her oxygen. I held Linda's hand. She whispered my name. She never left the house. She never signed anything that night. My voice cracked, but I didn't look away. I wanted Kayla to see the man she thought she could bury. Delgado closed her file. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks. The will, dated November 19th, is a forgery, unsupported by witnesses, contradicted by logs, and fatally tainted by fraud. The valid controlling will is from 2014, signed jointly by both spouses, witnessed, and kept on church record." She laid down a certified copy Pastor Joel had provided, stamped and notarized years earlier. The judge sat back silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "The November 19th document is hereby suspended, pending a final ruling. The 2014 will is recognized as controlling. Furthermore, the irregularities in the notarization are referred to the State Commission. The bank is ordered to maintain holds on contested transfers. Court is adjourned." The gavel cracked, and the sound rang through me like thunder. Outside the courtroom, Kayla hissed, "You think this is over?" Her nails dug into Mark's arm. I faced her squarely. "No," I said. "It's being recorded." She paled, realizing the transcript of her downfall was now part of the public record. As Mark turned away, his shoulders bent. I felt no triumph, just a deep, steady relief. The fight wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about Linda's truth. And now it was written, where no one could erase it. Justice doesn't come with fanfare. It comes with the sound of paper sliding across wood. I opened it slowly, black ink on white paper. The will of 2014 is recognized as controlling. Assets to surviving spouse. Accounts preserved in marital trust. Son to inherit only upon spouse's passing. It was as if Linda herself had spoken again, steadying me through the page. The order also referred the notary's conduct to the State Commission. Delgado explained, "Ms. Briggs will likely lose her commission. Kayla's lawyer has already signaled retreat. The bank will process reversals this week." Sure enough, the next day, Mr. Kwan called. "Mr. Whitman, the $12,000 cashier's check to Kayla's boutique has been reversed. Funds will reappear in your account within 3 days." His tone softened. "The $18,500 transfer is being clawed back through a repayment plan. We've placed a fraud alert on all related accounts. I wrote the numbers into my ledger. $12,000, $1,800, pending, balance restored. On January 22nd, Dennis from the funeral home mailed me a final invoice with a red stamp, paid in full. The $2,800 hospice bill I'd kept under a fridge magnet was marked zero balance too, covered by the estate once the accounts reopened. I framed the stamped copy above the kitchen desk, not as triumph, but as proof that Linda's debts had been honored her way. Kayla didn't come by again. Instead, I saw the signs on her boutique window when I drove past. Everything must go. Racks of unsold clothes stood like skeletons under fluorescent light. Ruth told me she'd overheard Kayla snapping at, "Mark in the driveway? We could have had it all if your father had just rolled over." That night, Mark sent me a text. "Dad, I'm sorry. I don't know how it got this far. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Linda left us honesty. That's all I ever wanted back." On January 24th, Delgado closed the file. She handed me a bound packet, thicker than a Bible, containing every affidavit, receipt, and court order. "Keep this safe," she said. "If they ever try again, you won't need to fight from scratch." I slid the packet into my fireproof box, the same box Kayla had stolen a key for, now with a brand new lock and key. As it clicked shut, I felt something loosen in my chest. In the days that followed, I changed the garage code from 1969 to 2025. I taped a new key log inside the pantry door. Every detail was squared away, every receipt stored. The house felt lighter, as if Linda was pleased with the order. On Sunday, Pastor Joel stopped by after service. He handed me a skein of yarn Linda had left at the church, sparrow grey. "She said it was for you," he smiled. I wound it around the binder holding the 2014 will, tying it like ribbon on a gift. Justice didn't feel like winning. It felt like balance restored, like Linda's voice finally heard through me. And in that quiet, I realized something. Revenge had never been the goal. Truth was, houses don't keep secrets. People do. That's what I learned walking room to room in late January, snow dusting the azaleas outside. I started in the kitchen. The fridge magnet no longer held a hospice bill, but a grocery list I'd written myself. On the counter sat Linda's old recipe box, still smelling faintly of cinnamon. I lifted one card. Her neat script, chicken pot pie, bake until golden. Underneath, the smaller card with the iPad passcode. I smiled bitterly. Even in death, she'd been leaving me instructions. The living room still carried her presence. The armchair with its faded cushion, the crochet hook tucked in the side pocket. A faint trace of lavender lotion clung to the fabric. I breathed it in, realizing memory has a scent as much as a sound. On January 27th, I invited Mark to meet me. No lawyers, just us. 6 p.m. at the kitchen table where he'd once done math homework while Linda baked pies. I set out 2 mugs, one with a tea bag, one empty. He arrived late, shoulders hunched. He sat staring at the wood grain of the table. "Dad, I don't know what to say." "You could start with why," I answered. His voice cracked. "Kayla, she said it was for us, that Mom wanted her grandkids secure. I thought if I didn't go along, I'd lose her." I slid the ledger across the table. The pages were filled with dates, receipts, and notes in my careful block letters. "You didn't just almost lose me, Mark. You almost lost her memory. This isn't about money, it's about honesty." He turned the pages slowly, stopping at the entry where I'd logged the Ring doorbell motion. His eyes filled. "I didn't know she went that far," he whispered. I pushed a photocopy of the 2014 will toward him. "This is what your mother wanted, not just for me, for you too. But it wasn't meant to be stolen early. It was meant to wait." He dropped his head into his hands. For a moment, I saw not the man who betrayed me, but the boy who once built a birdhouse with me in this very kitchen. We sat in silence until the oven timer dinged. I'd forgotten I'd put bread in. The sound made us both laugh, sharp and awkward, but real. "Dad," he said finally, "can I come back? Not for money, for dinner." I studied him, weighing the damage. "The locks changed to keep us honest, not apart," I said. "You're still my son. Dinner's waiting." That night, after he left, I walked the house again. I touched the paint Linda had chosen, sparrow grey on the walls. I charged her iPad on the counter. On the screen, I found a photo she'd taken weeks before she passed, a close-up of the recipe card with the passcode. It was as if she'd known I'd need reminding. Grief doesn't vanish when justice arrives, but it changes shape. It becomes quieter, steadier, like a candle instead of a wildfire. As I closed the ledger, I realized I'd kept something else alive besides money or property. I'd kept Linda's intent, and that was worth more than any account balance. Some victories aren't measured in applause, they're measured in locks. Changed, bills balanced, and nights of sleep that finally come without interruption. By February, the snow along the sidewalks had turned to grey slush, and the courthouse fight felt like another season entirely. Life settled, one small piece at a time. On February 3rd, I met with Mr. Kwan at the bank. We sat in his office surrounded by framed certificates and potted plants. He slid a folder across the desk. "The marital trust is active. You'll receive monthly distributions for living expenses. Accounts are secured. No further withdrawals without court oversight." I signed the forms slowly, each stroke of the pen steady. Every receipt, every log I'd kept had led to this moment. Paper had protected me the way fists never could. Back home, I pulled the fireproof box from the closet. It was heavier than I remembered, maybe because it no longer felt empty. Inside, I placed the bound copy of the 2014 will, the court order, and the bank's confirmation letters. I locked it with a new key, one Kayla never touched. The metallic click sounded final, like a vault closing on the past. The Notary Commission sent me a letter the following week. Ms. Briggs was suspended pending investigation. The envelope was thin, but it carried weight. A system that had looked the other way had finally admitted fault. Meanwhile, Kayla's boutique windows were plastered with signs. Final clearance. Going out of business. Ruth said she saw Kayla one afternoon pacing outside on the phone, her voice sharp and panicked. The mannequins in the window stood naked, stripped of the dresses she'd once bragged about. Mark still came by, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit. One evening, he helped me shovel the walkway. He didn't say much, but when I handed him the new garage code, 2025, he swallowed hard. "Thanks, Dad." Inside the pantry, I taped a fresh key log. 3 hooks, front door, garage, mailbox. Each key accounted for. I wrote the date at the bottom, February 10th, order restored. On the 14th, Valentine's Day, Ruth knocked with a loaf of banana bread. She set it on the counter and said, "Linda used to bring me a slice every February, said it tasted better when shared." We ate it with tea, the house warmer for once. That night I found myself writing Linda a letter. I tucked it into the fireproof box alongside the will. "We paid the hospice bill," I wrote. "The house is safe, Mark is learning, and I'm still here." The next morning, I sat on the porch with my ledger in my lap. The pages were filled now, no more blank spaces. I wrote one last line, assets intact. House secure, ledger closed. Then I shut the book for good. They tried to bury me at my wife's funeral. Instead, they dug up their own trail. By late February, the snow had melted from the eaves, dripping into small puddles that reflected the grey Missouri sky. Life had grown quiet again, but not the kind of silence that comes from grief. This was the silence of order, of things put back where they belonged. One morning, the mail brought an envelope from the State Notary Commission. Inside was a handwritten note from Ms. Briggs herself. The words wobbled across the page. "I'm sorry I let someone rush me. I shouldn't have stamped what I didn't see." A woman who thought she was doing a small favor had undone herself with one careless act. 2 days later, I received a text from Kayla. "Just one line. We're moving. Don't expect to see us." No apology, no explanation. A fitting exit for someone who thought life was just about acquiring keys and documents, never about keeping faith. I didn't reply. Some doors closed themselves. That evening, I sat on the porch where Linda and I used to count cardinals in the spring. The wood was worn smooth under my hand. I opened my ledger one last time, writing the final entry. All assets restored. House secure. Mark learning. Kayla gone. Then I shut it, knowing I would never open it again. I took the skein of sparrow grey yarn Pastor Joel had given me and wound it around the 2014 will-like ribbon on a gift. It wasn't just paper. It was Linda's last word, her steady hand guiding me even after she was gone. I placed it in the fireproof box, locked it, and hung the key back on the hook. Every slot filled now, no gaps accusing me. The house breathed with me again. The oven timer dinged. I'd left bread warming. For the first time in months, the sound didn't startle me. It made me smile. Before bed, I sat with a cup of tea and spoke aloud to the empty chair across from me. "Linda, they thought they could erase you, but you left me every clue. You gave me the map, and I followed it." The steam from the mug curled into the air like her laugh, rising and fading, but never really gone. The irony was simple. Kayla and Mark had rushed to grab an inheritance that wasn't theirs yet. In doing so, they exposed themselves. If they'd waited, if they'd honored Linda's wishes, they would have had everything in time. Instead, they lost it all in a single hearing. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Justice hadn't come with fury. It had come with paper, ink, and patience. And when I finally wrote the last line in my journal that night, I knew it was true. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away. I just chose to come back to myself."